While the media might be trying to make it seem like the Evergrande situation is over, resolved, and a non-issue, the truth is that there are still an awful lot of questions that have yet to be answered. The other day alone, it was rumoured that Evergrande was about to be soft-nationalised. Then, just a few hours later, new rumours emerged, suggesting that Evergrande was about to be left to fail. We do now think that Chinese currency bonds are going to be repaid, but it seems like the CCP will allow US dollar debts to be ignored with no consequence. And the big one in my mind, the one that really came out of left field, that sounded ridiculous at first, is the connection between Evergrande, the Chinese property market, and Tether, the cryptocurrency stablecoin. Now I know that at first a link between Evergrande and crypto might not seem very plausible, but the evidence is starting to mount, and a theory has started to develop. Basically, it's possible that Tether, and by proxy the entire crypto market, has been providing backdoor financing to the property sector in China. And that's what we're going to discuss today. This supposed link between the two markets and what it could mean for crypto in the coming months. But first, really quickly, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're putting out loads of content just like this constantly that you don't want to miss out on. At this point, most people know what's going on with Tether and their potential fraud. But for anyone who doesn't know, it's really not too complicated. Basically, Tether, or USDT, is a stablecoin or a cryptocurrency that tracks the value of the US dollar. It exists because it's easier to exchange one crypto for another than to trade one crypto for a dollar. As a result of this, stablecoins provide much needed liquidity to the crypto markets, and Tether, or USDT, is the largest stablecoin in the world. As of right now, there are $68 billion of USDT in circulation, so it is by no means a small fish. Now, in order to ensure that one USDT is always worth $1 US, Tether claimed that each coin was backed by a physical US dollar in an account held by them, which would allow them to buy back every single coin if needed. Over the last year, however, it has emerged that this was a lie. The US Department of Justice started investigating Tether and basically found out that it wasn't backed by US dollars as they had claimed. Nowadays, Tether claim that each USDT is backed by US dollars or cash equivalents, or from time to time, receivables from loans made to third parties. Basically, they now decide what they back USDT with, and they admit to sometimes using other assets. Most recently, they've claimed that 50% of USDT is backed by commercial papers, which can be thought of as short-term company bonds. In short, anyone who knows anything about crypto considers Tether and USDT to be a huge scam, because they are literally printing their own money based on the illusion of it being backed 100% by dollars, when in reality it isn't. The way Tether get around all the legal problems that their lying would cause is by simply refusing to address anything that they can't outright deny. They make statements about anything positive about their business and just pretend that the problems don't exist. Now, when we heard that 50% of Tether's reserves were commercial papers, pretty much everyone just assumed that it was some sort of loan between Tether and the exchanges or Bitfinex. But more recently, Tether have come out and emphatically denied this. Now the question is, what are those commercial papers? Well, Tether have told us that the commercial papers are real, that they are all AA rated, but they have refused to state whether or not any or even all of it is Chinese. Now, with the way Tether operate and with the state of the corporate bond market in China, we pretty much know for sure that if the commercial papers weren't Chinese, they would have said so. We can also assume that if the commercial papers were from a reputable and stable bank like HSBC, that they would be quick to say that as well. So it's very likely that this debt isn't from as reputable a source as Tether would like you to think. We also know that these commercial papers are not coming from the US or Europe. The reasons for this are a little complicated, but basically $30 billion is a lot of money, and no one has been buying commercial papers by that quantity over here. It also recently emerged that the Chinese property developers have been using commercial papers and shell companies as backdoor loans to finance their operations after the 3 red line policy was introduced by the CCP, which basically stopped developers from being able to take out more debt. In 2020 alone, over $500 billion in commercial papers was issued by Chinese property developers. Now, usually, commercial papers aren't a great source of interest, and you're probably going to be looking at a return close to 0.01% a year. For someone with $30 billion worth of assets like Tether, that's a measly $3 million a year, and for Tether, that just wouldn't be worth the risk. But if a company were in trouble, say the government of the country they operated in wouldn't let them release any corporate bonds and they needed more cash to finish their projects, they would probably be willing to pay far higher interest rates, and they'd be willing to work with less than reputable companies. So which possible industry in the developing world could need $30 billion and is also willing to work with a company like Tether, who is widely regarded as being guilty of fraud and has practically no positive reputation? Well, the idea that Tether has been providing backdoor financing to the Chinese property market is starting to sound a little more plausible now. When it comes to evidence though, unfortunately, it is all circumstantial. But to be perfectly honest, everything in the Chinese economy is shrouded in mystery and kept behind closed doors. So there was never going to be a smoking gun, just a fair bit of smoke. That being said, there are some very interesting events which only convince me further that this has been going on. Firstly, Tether usually has to print more USDT as the crypto market rises to facilitate the increase in trading volume. And earlier in the year, Tether started to print more USDT as the crypto market rose as expected. What was not expected was that Tether would continue to print USDT when the market stopped rising in mid-April. In fact, $15 billion worth more USDT was printed between mid-April and June, when the crypto market had fallen. Coincidentally, at the same time, Evergrande and other Chinese property developers were reporting risks of defaults, making it seem like Tether could have been providing them with the much needed liquidity required to pay their debts, and the Chinese government, let alone anyone else in the world, wouldn't have even known about it. Reuters have also reported that Evergrande affiliated Shenzhen Bank is under investigation after it illegally loaned up to $20 billion to Evergrande via indirect channels. This could be those backdoor loans from subsidiaries or shell companies that we mentioned earlier. It's also worth noting that again, $20 billion is a huge loan, even for the world's largest banks like JP Morgan. So a mid-sized Chinese bank having access to that kind of money is suspicious on its own. Then, in July, Fitch Ratings, one of only 3 ratings agencies in the US recognized by the Securities and Exchange Commission, came out and said that Tether could disrupt credit markets due to its commercial paper issuance. 1 month prior to that, the Boston Fed president announced that stablecoins and specifically Tether could trigger a crisis in the financial markets. More recently, Yellen and Powell have been speaking of the need to regulate stablecoins, and in particular Tether, due to fears about reserves and their actions. Now, you'll have to forgive me for going to Jim Cramer for information. I'm not a fan of his any more than any of you are, but he is a public figure at risk of being sued for slander. So if he makes a claim from inside sources, the chances are they are reliable. Well, Cramer stated that he has Chinese sources who know that Tether's reserves are made up of Chinese commercial paper, which just goes on to strengthen my belief in this story. Unfortunately, that's where we're left wanting. As to whether or not the theory is true, I'm leaning towards an 80% likelihood that it is the case, and I think that in the future, more pieces of evidence are going to emerge which will support this idea. Until then, we can only wait. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this video, then make sure to subscribe. If you want to help spread the word, then consider liking the video, and YouTube will do its part by pushing this video out to more people just like you. I really do appreciate all the support you give the channel, even if it's just leaving a like. Down below, there's a link to my favorite brokerage called eToro, where you can trade stocks and shares, crypto, commodities, foreign currencies, and more, all for 0% commission. And there's also a link down below in the description to BlockFi, where you can get up to $250 in free Bitcoin, and you can earn interest on whatever crypto you hold. Whether it's Bitcoin, Ether, or even stablecoins, you can earn as much as 14% interest a year. I've also started up a second channel called Stoic Finance 2, and I've just set up a crypto channel called Stoic Crypto, so make sure to check both of those out as well. Finally, I am working on setting up my own website where I'll post videos and articles in the future, and I've got a Patreon in the works as well. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching. Until next time.